Hi there. I'm Amelia Fruby, and this is my tiny tarot practice. Today's card is the Seven of Wands. In the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, the Seven of Wands features a figure holding a wand diagonally, this big giant stick diagonally across the front of their body. And there are 6 other wands that look like they're coming toward them from in front of them. They're maybe standing on a cliff or a hill, and they're coming up from below, perhaps, reaching out against them. The expression on the figure's face looks tense or angry or in the middle of it. This definitely feels like a card of conflict, a card that's in the midst of a battle. In the True Heart Intuitive Tarot, it's not quite the same energy. It has a figure who is holding a shield, and there are 7 flaming wands that have protruding from it or pierced into it. They look like arrows almost. And the figure has their hand on their hip, kind of cocked, like in a less active pose, perhaps, or a pose that reminds me of like confidence. Their face seems serene or victorious. And in that image, the figure is dressed in all red and has a shield of red, and there's fire. Often in my interpretations of the wands, I really focus on wands as creative force and energy. But as I move through the minor arcana, I'm reminded that it is also a suit of conflict. It's also a suit of anger. It's also a suit of high emotions, and high emotions can be beautiful and glorious and also tense and painful and hard. I always try to read tarot affirmationally because that's how I enjoy it. But I think that the cards invite us to not look away from the challenges of life as well, even if we understand those as bringing us value, as affirming something, even in their hardship. When I think of the Seven of Wands, and particularly the figure in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck with this giant stick in front of them with the wand across their body, I think of boundary setting. I think of holding something in front of you, of creating a barrier between you and things coming at you. And you can stand confidently behind that, like a badass bitch in the True Heart Intuitive Tarot pose. Or it can be really hard to hold a boundary, and you can struggle against it, like the figure in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But I think that this card for me feels like a moment where you are holding or creating that boundary, and you are standing in it or even against it, or there are others standing against it, and you are having to hold it for yourself. And of course, as always with tarot, those others could be external forces, people, events, things happening, or they could be internal. It could be internal voices. It could be imposter syndrome. It could be negative self-talk. You could be holding your own against some of your own personal struggles or demons, if we want to use that language. But the nice thing about the wands to me is that they do bring that force. Like, you can do it. This isn't a card where you're holding that boundary and then like it's all going to fall apart, or it doesn't. Like, you've got this. You've got this. And that is the message that I like to take away from this card. It sees you in a hard time, in a tough spot, in trying to hold it together. It sees that. It doesn't shy away from looking at that, and it says, you've got this. It's hard, but you've got this. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of my tiny tarot practice. As always, you can find links to the books and decks that I mentioned on this podcast in the show notes. I made a great bookshop list for you to peruse my favorite books about tarot and magic. If you make a purchase through that link, I'll receive a small affiliate payment that helps me keep this podcast going. For now, I'll just leave you with the reminder that no matter what you're going through, you've got this.